Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome Wētā Workshop Project Supervisor Cameron May and Creature Supervisor Tyler Page, who join us to talk about their work on Alien Romulus. Cameron and Tyler will talk us through the conception, design, and usage of the facehugger in the film. Please be warned, there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Cameron and Tyler. Hi, Cam and Tyler. Thank you for joining me today.
Nice to be
Thank
here.
you for having us.
I'm excited to sit down and talk to you guys about Alien Romulus, which is going to be streaming on Hulu on November 21st. And then also you can catch it on Blu-ray, the Ultra HD, VOD. There's also probably going to be Ultra HD DVD. And then also just to fit with the aesthetic of the film, as Tyler was saying off air, a VHS copy, which is quite exciting as well.
It's pretty cool that they've done that.
Yeah, if I know, like we're getting into that sort of retro nature with also vinyls and all that, but to bring VHS back, I need to see if we still have our VHS tape player.
It's a bold move.
But before we jump into the project, this is the sort of the first time I've had people from a well, I say company, well, from Wētā in general. Before we jump in, what do you guys do for the company, and what do Wētā do as well for the audiences that don't know?
Well, Wētā Workshop is a 30-year-old special effects company. We do a range of work, and we've brought typically for 30 years we've been bringing stories to life, concept design, physical effects, and screen projects around the world. We've kind of grown over the years from doing prop, costume, and special effects works. We also do game development. We have a collectibles division, and we make immersive visitor experiences. One thing that stayed consistent, which is in theme with what we're talking about now, is we've been doing animatronics for the entire duration. Our CEO, Richard Taylor, is an animatronics like a passion. Animatronics is a massive passion for him, and he's been personally involved with them during the entire duration of the workshop's existence. I am a project supervisor in charge of robotics and animatronics at Wētā Workshop. So I oversee projects that have to do with any kind of like animatronic puppets, but as well as humanoid robots, which is a recent sort of push for us as well. So for the purposes of doing this work, I was one of the lead mechanical designers on the project as well, and so I had a hands-on role in designing a lot of the animatronic puppets that were part of the film.
And I've been working with Wētā on numerous projects over the last 15 years. So basically, when Cam and the team at the workshop are finished with the product, it gets handed over to me, and I take it to set with a team usually from the workshop. And we work with the directors, producers, cast to make everything work and bring it all to life.
There's a vicious rumor online that you guys work together, but you've actually never met in person. Is that correct?
I think we've probably kind of worked on the same projects, for maybe 5 or 6 projects, but yet me and Tyler have never been physically in the same room as each other.
Yeah, this is a true story.
Again, amazing, isn't it? Right, just how you could be in different sides of the world and still manage to create stuff together and have
Yep.
like an end goal of it all.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that we're able to do that now. It's so easy now to just jump on a Zoom call and problem solve and work through something.
Yeah, it's just amazing what technology can do, but then also what Wētā does as well. Because when you look at the sort of credits, what's there with Planet of the Apes, Rebel Moon, Men in Black, and it's just it's amazing. And when they talk about sort of movie magic, this is what kind of feels like it in a way, because you see what people can go from an idea in their mind to then what's actually being used on sets. I think that's always the sort of thing that, like, personally, I get blown away by it. And I guess other people as well, because it's also how much time and effort it is just for certain things in films or even TV shows.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always blown away by the opportunities we get to put so much labor into something, right? Like the facehuggers for this show, they're a passion project for dozens of people through the workshop, right? And so many countless hours got poured into them. And we're blown away by the fact that we even get to do that, right? The fact that we walk into work and we get to go and do that for 9 hours a day, right? That's astonishing to us.
I know, kind of moving away slightly from the project, but do you ever have moments where you kind of pinch yourself where you think, I remember watching certain films as a youngster, teenager, and now I'm kind of working on these franchises as well, where it's like, wow, this is amazing.
What happens is it's often like when we finish making like a prototype or a finished product, we then take it from our engineering, laboratory and take it to the photo studio. So there's always this moment where you're walking along with the thing that you've made, and you're just walking along with a face hugger and holding it, and you're like, this is my job. And you have this sort of realization where you're like, someone pays me to do this. It's like it's quite an uncanny feeling because I mean I've worked in a call center in my past, right? I know what like the drudgery of work feels like, and this is something else entirely. So yeah, I always pinch myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I get the same thing on set. For this one, I flew to Budapest from Vancouver and started opening up boxes, and there's these amazing, beautiful but hideous face huggers that
Mm.
I get to bring to life with my team. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's definitely a pinch yourself moment.
Yeah, 100%. And I know that feeling as well. But back to the project, how did the project come along and what made you want to take it on?
I mean, Brent O'Connor, the producer, got in touch with us initially, and a team went out and met with Fede in LA to talk about the project. Fede obviously is one of these directors who has an amazing passion for practical physical effects. And obviously, within the kind of alien context, he had an impulse, obviously, to be, homage to the original films and showcase the practical effects again. And for us, it's a no-brainer. Like, we would never in a million years say no to an aliens project, right? And no, we would never say no to working with Fede, right? This is like a double whammy for us in terms of opportunity. I think there's only probably like 10 projects in the world or 10 universes that people really like have kind of etched into their soul, from the coming up in the 80s and 90s, right? And this is one of those critical ones.
I think as well, when an opportunity comes up, you can't really say no, right? And then, as you said, if a franchise hits you in a certain way, it's just like, wow, okay, this is gonna be cool. But then I guess when you meet with the creatives as well, that adds another dynamic because in their mind they have a certain vision of how they want to get things done, and I guess as well, if they want to be very practical, it probably makes it a bit more exciting because then you have to figure out how you can bring their vision to life to it all.
Yeah, I think particularly with something like this, where we're going all in on animatronics. We're not doing sort of a kind of like just one little kind of effect or something, but we've gone all in on the project, right? We're making, dozens worth of facehuggers, right? That all are extremely intricate and complicated and rich in terms of their puppetry potential, right? And rather than just making kind of a small prop which does kind of one gag, right? So for us, it was just that enormity of that opportunity was not lost on us.
With like when you do something where instead of having it as one gag, but so in this case, they were fully sort of functional face huggers. You see them, I've seen the sort of behind the scenes videos of how they're all moving. What sort of challenges comes up with something like that? Because obviously with the animatronic side, there's probably a lot of research development involved, but then also like there's like the practical side of it, but then there's a mechanical side of like how is this actually going to move and actually work on set? Like where do you start with that sort of stuff?
In terms of the design process.
Yeah, the design and then also the functionality of it.
When we initially looked at the film, we were given a script, and so our supervisors on the project essentially broke down the script and then essentially took each scene and then tried to figure out what was the best opportunity for an animatronic or puppet or and a gag within the context of that, right? And so what that did, and this was quite an intricate process, is that enabled us to sort of like start to map out a bunch of face huggers, essentially a bunch of gags or props that will essentially be used in that particular scene. And what we're trying to do is obviously to find opportunities to, reuse some or kind of like find ways to make things modular. But what we got out of that process was essentially a bunch of visual diagrams, which became the sort of the thing that we were trying, the core map of what we were trying to make. And they were beautifully crafted images with essentially, what joints we required, what kind of puppetry rig. And these are a hypothesis, right, at this point. They were, what we thought would be the best possible scenario for that particular scene. Whether or not that actually worked out in reality is what jury can talk about. But we effectively then with those diagrams would start to look at what the mechanical reality of it was, right? So obviously, we had our perfect pitch in terms of what we wanted to achieve, and then we needed to start to break those down in terms of, what are the mechanical variations or permutations about how we go about making these puppets. And so the first thing we did is to make one leg, right? One leg with a full articulation. And what that helped us to do is to find out where the sort of limitations of what we're trying to do were. And then from that point on, we essentially started to branch out in terms of, all right, maybe it's not just one leg, but maybe there's three different types of legs here, which is in fact what we ended up with. That had slight variations in terms of how they would be used, right? So the hero animatronic puppet might have 3 degrees of freedom per leg that were 3 servo motors, but then a more mobile, lightweight attack puppet for sort of high impact scenes would only have 1 degree of freedom per finger. And what that helped us to do is to start to establish a sort of shared design language between all the puppets. That helped us to sort of, get a bit of a flow in terms of how we were working across the puppets.
Yeah, and so then we on set, Fede was quite organized in having a very clear idea of what he wanted to do. He had a very clear animated previs that we were able to follow. I think the biggest scene for us was the cryo chamber, where we get introduced to the face huggers and see them for the first time. We had the opportunity, which you don't often get, but of having the set for a few days with the water in it, so that we could work through everything, and I could shoot my own little previs live with stunt performers and work out which of the different variations of face huggers we're going to use in each of the situations in each of the attacks, and then cut that together, show it to Fede, and hope that he liked it, which he did, and ended up shooting pretty much what we shot in our previs, with the exception of there's one face hugger that crawls across the pipes on the ceiling upside down, which Fede added about 20 minutes before we were going to shoot it. So we quickly rigged up an animatronic to a puppeteering rod and had Misi, one of our local puppeteers, run that along the pipes while Craig Holborn, one of the engineers from Wētā, was running the animatronics on it. And you can see that in some of the behind the scenes, which is pretty cool. And then we just basically went through Fede's previs and said, okay, there's a animatronic here, but then that's going to leap, so he should cut away, and we'll switch that to a silicon hugger on a mono line. And we had face huggers for when you don't quite see them, but you see the wake of the huggers before they jump out of the water. That would have been a face hugger on a rail on a track being pulled along by a winch, and then another hugger, which was just a silicon face hugger, at the end of that track, which would get pulled on a monofilament line to jump out of the water and through the doors and into actors' faces. So we had the great opportunity of having, I think it was 3 days in the wet set to work through all that and film it and cut it for Fede.
So there's a lot to take in from that answer, because there's just so much. One is very interesting, but there's also a lot of sort of technical side. And I feel like it's split into two, where you have Cam himself and his team, they're doing the animatronics, and then Tyler, you kind of get the fun part of just using it on set. And but what I'm curious about is, because there is probably constant dialogue between you two about where it goes from having that one little movement to then three and then more. But because you don't see Tyler, you don't see it until probably quite later on. How does your involvement, how do you get involved in the big in their process part, or do you kind of just let them do their bit and then take it from a certain point on?
Yeah, as far as that goes, the team at Wētā Workshop will do the design, the build, the engineering. It gets handed over to me and the team on set with a lot of support and documentation about how everything works. Of course, everything always works best in the workshop, and then you get it onto set, and situations change. So there's always minor tweaks and adjustments and redesigns of certain things. So we're in constant communication between wherever we are, in this case, between Budapest and Wellington, New Zealand, saying, hey, when we put this particular face hugger in this situation, it's not behaving as it should or as it's designed to, and then we make the design tweaks and do all that in the workshop in
So,
Budapest.
see, I very much think that I have the fun job, and then Tyler has the stressful job of actually making it work and doing all those things. Because when we just put stuff in a box and send it away, we know full well that we've got things to like, 90%, right? And then the realities of being on set will kind of like mean there's inevitably changes. But just to sort of answer your question in a different way, certainly me and the team that were designing the face huggers were definitely looking at the sort of the engineering side of how these things would practically work. But at the workshop there were two supervisors that were in charge of the project, Joe Dunkley and Ben Price. And effectively, they were being the ones that were putting things through their paces here. And so we were in constant dialogue with those two in terms of, right, here's something I made, and they would sort of like, throw it back at me and tell me to change a bunch of stuff, or we'd test it in the studio, and determine what was best. Like, during the very early water tests, we actually ended up buying some underwater RC drones, putting facehuggers on top, and piloting them around in the swimming pool, only to figure out that this was never going to work, right? This is a dead end, and so we kind of just abandoned that road and kind of start something new. So whilst there was a lot of sort of engineering and stuff going along, there's a lot of testing and a lot of throwing things out and starting again, and there's a reality where sort of conceptual kind of mechanical designs that you think will work just don't, right? They just don't work in reality, and then some things are extremely strong. So in the sort of like 12 to 16 weeks that we had to do this project, a lot of it was about just trying to get something out physical on the disk as soon as possible so you can actually verify that the idea in your head did or didn't work. One thing to note about the universe that we're operating in is obviously it has a rich history in animatronics, right? We had a sort of double-edged sword here where we were very much influenced by the films that had come before us. And at the same time, the animatronics that were done in those jobs before us were extremely good, right? So there's a very high level in terms of, achievement that we're trying to hit, which meant that a lot of the sort of things we were trying to explore were very much influenced by the past and us trying to sort of add our own, take and try to kind of increase motion or do things differently, right?
Does that add a lot of pressure for you, knowing that the bar is set so high?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But do you feel as well, because I guess the saying is like you're standing on like the shoulders of gods before you,
Yeah.
but do you feel as well that you can also add your own spin to it and sort of be like, cool, they've done theirs, now let's show them how like the new school kids on the block do it.
I think one of the realities of working on this type of things is that the work that was done in the 70s and 80s, in particular, was like astonishing. Like you look at them, there's really nice, beautiful images and videos of the previous, facehuggers, which obviously I interrogated like for hours and hours on end, only to be, mystified and blown away, right, by it. Like the work is of an exceptionally high quality on those jobs. So it's as the new kid on the block, or a group of us that are trying things that are maybe of a new generation. that's quite intimidating. And because technology has changed, and so we're obviously trying to do things differently. We embrace 3D printing a lot more than, day by day here than we did, even last year. And looking at these sort of beautiful CNC machined mechanisms and lots of RC technology and things like that, that is a very intimidating place because we know that like the one thing we can't do is to provide something that's less than that, right?
Yeah, and you don't want to provide anything less than that because then it then lowers the sort of look and standard that's been set.
Of
Um,
course. Yeah. So
Yeah, and
one really good example of something was the remote control face hugger, right? Now it was there was a wind up cable pull version of a face hugger that was done on a previous Aliens film, and it had this really beautiful kind of leg mechanism in it, which had all these gear trains. And when we saw it, we had been given a brief effectively to make a remote control car version of a face hugger, one that would run along the floor, right? And effectively, the sort of recipe for how we were going to go about and do that, we essentially we could see a really clear precedent in the first Alien films. And so what we did is created a sort of modernized remote control car version of this kind of like this cable pull toy from a previous Alien. So it was from a modernized version of something from the past. So there's definitely aspects in which we definitely transform things and brought them to a new era, but they're very much rooted in the technology of the past.
yeah, those remote control face huggers were Fede's Fede's favorite toy for creating nightmare fuel for people. He would run them around the studio, go into the cast tent, freak people out because it really, I mean, you can't see a person operating it because they can be 20 feet away, but all of a sudden there's a face hugger in the tent with you running between your legs, which is terrifying for them and hilarious for Fede.
I can imagine it reminds me a little bit of like that's one I don't know which theme park it is in Florida, but they did the sort of Honey I Shrunk the Kids, but I Shrunk the Audience where they have all the sound effects and you have like the mice with the wind blowing through you, and I can imagine it's like something like that, but scarier because of the face hugger and you don't know what what it's capable of. But again, that is just the sort of shenanigans that happen on set. Um,
Exactly.
but what I'm curious to know about as well, which I think might be slightly boring side as well, because you start talking about health and safety and everybody kind of just groans sometimes about that side. But what is the health and safety sides of the mechanics of face huggers? And because you've got cast interact with them stunts, like what steps are taken that you don't hurt them or no
Yeah.
damage is done to face huggers?
So that is a top priority for us on set is if we're interacting with cast or camera crew, throwing face huggers at camera, where our top priority in those situations is to protect the people that are in the line who could potentially get injured. Any of the face huggers that were flying at, it was mostly Spike, but we would put a what we call a dead man line on them. So we'd have a monofilament line off the back of the face hugger going to a pick point on the ground off camera so that it could fly. You could see the underside of the face hugger on camera, but it would stop at a certain point, and then there would have to be a cut where the face hugger is on the actual actor, and that would be a soft face hugger. We had special ones that had carved out on the inside, so those ones would be the ones that were fully clenching, and then there was ones with the proboscis, that goes down inside of the person to lay the eggs. So we had those that we could puppeteer and move across their faces. In all of those situations, before we shoot and as soon as we cut the camera, I always run in and check on the cast just to make sure that nothing's happened. There hasn't been, a piece of armature hasn't come out and nicked them, that they're safe and comfortable. And we've talked about the high tech side of things with the animatronics and with the remote controls. It also came down to having 6 puppeteers crouching on their knees in hip waders in the water and literally throwing silicon face huggers at the cast. So it goes from super high tech to incredibly low tech.
Yeah, amazing.
Again, but then that's just the magic of movie making, how you go from one scale to the other, and especially to get what you need for the day and how they'll edit it all together. But I do kind of find that sort of interesting of how like your babies basically work with actors and how you still need to think about that safety aspect of it. Because as you said, if something's broken off and nicks them on the face or something, it's not a good look, really, is it?
No, and when we were lucky in that, well, not lucky. I mean, we did our work to make sure that everyone was safe, but there were no incidents of any kind of injury or things going awry. Yeah, it all went very smoothly. And we do rehearse on ourselves and stunt performers before we get into the cast. So we'll set up all of our gags, all of our rigging, and then me or someone on my team will go into the position the actor's in, and we'll do the gag and just make sure that it is safe. So that, yeah, that is our top priority.
Yeah. I think that's always important. If somebody said, "Have you ever tested?" If you're going to put someone forward to do something, you need to test it out on yourself first to make sure it's
Yeah,
perfectly well. Because facehuggers have a specific look and feel, um, and they need to match what everybody else is doing in the film in terms of, say, like production design and set deck. What is collaboration like with other departments? Are they thinking of how, so for production design and set deck, do they think about how you guys are going to come in and use the space and design it around that?
yeah.
Or is it just a constant sort of back and forth of how they'll set up?
I think it was a bit of both. They definitely designed the sets knowing that there's going to be creature puppeteering happening. So um, all of the sets were raised. We had spaces underneath that if we needed to get under and do rod puppeteering from below, we could. And then for I think the biggest sequence where any of that sort of interaction with other departments, set deck and art department and production design, would be the corridor where they've turned up the heat and all the face huggers are somewhat dormant. So we talked with set deck and basically went through their stash of dressing that they were going to dress into those corridors and picked out boxes and crates and things that we could hide puppeteers behind. A lot of those where you see an animatronic, but the body's moving up and down, that would be a pre-programmed animatronic face hugger, but literally inside the box would be a human puppeteer with a rod giving it the slight movements to bring it to life. So yeah, we went to set decorating and got a lot of their dressing and then got out our saws and our drills and went to town on it. And had our puppeteers hiding inside and behind and in the ceiling and in the floor, and basically had these modular components so we could just move them around within the set to extend the hallway and make different shots.
Amazing though, like I can imagine, set dresses, everybody's done they're like, oh, perfect, it's all set up, and then you and your team
Yeah,
come in, you just hear the soaring, and it's just like, what's going on?
yeah, there's a bit of that.
Like,
Yeah, great work, everybody. Now let's bring out the whole saw and
um, what's like the collaboration with sort of like the camera team as well? Because I can imagine that instead of sort of lighting subjects, they're probably more lighting the area. So when you guys come in, there's probably chunks where they could hide you in the darkness, and then the face hugger can come into the light. But then also as camera operators as well, they need to follow you around if it's in the water, on the ceilings, or on the walls.
yeah, we try and work closely with camera operators and with visual effects, and try and minimize the amount of painting out that they'll have to do. Painting out the human puppeteers. So we try and get ourselves as far out of shot as we possibly can. Sometimes that's not possible, and people have to put on the green or the gray suit so that they can be easily painted out, which everyone loves getting into the lycra suit. um, but we do work closely with both camera and visual effects to make sure that we can get the shot as in camera as possible without having to rely on visual effects or anything else.
And that's quite, again, important, but then also quite interesting. Poor person has to put on Oh, Lycra. I think if I was an actor, probably, from the corner of your eye, you could just see this green person coming towards you. I think that'd probably put
Yeah,
me off and make me laugh.
that's the other thing that I mean, it's so great for the cast to be able to interact with these physical things. When you have a tennis ball on a stick near your face, it's a lot different than when you have an actual face hugger that's smashing against you and trying to get into your mouth and lay eggs, and it's covered in slime and goo and lube, and yeah. So I think that when they have that and there is a person in a gray suit there, it's more focusing on this creature that's trying to get inside me.
Yeah, and I think even the practical side, as an actor, seeing the face hugger, well, one, it is a thing of nightmares, but then actually being there and not needing to pretend probably will make it easier for yourself. But then also you could probably think, I do not want this right in my face, like
there,
especially with the slime as well. Oof.
yeah, there was a lot of that. Like it is going back to the health and safety, we do everything we can to keep them safe and comfortable, but there is a slimy creature crawling across your face, and it's quite unpleasant for anyone. So that that disgust and fear and terror on their faces is to a large extent real.
Yeah. I know we've touched upon about it with using face huggers on set, and I think from your answers, it has been quite fun, especially like that you can do a previs of your own of how they're going to move and show Fede how you sort of want to play the scene out from script to on the day. But would even though you have the fun side, is there any problems that might come up whilst you're doing it? And then how do you solve those problems on set when you're on such tight time restrictions?
Yeah, I mean, inevitably, there's always little things that come up. I think I talked before about the animatronic on the ceiling. That was one that we really had to problem solve in very little time, and we were still shooting in that set, so it's not like we could just go off and rehearse it. We were in the space, so we had to basically improvise on the day and think theoretically this is probably going to work, which it ended up working. But yeah, there's always those little. There wasn't a lot of major hiccups on this particular project because we were given so much time to work through things. But when those issues do arise, it's always a matter of just getting the whole team together, putting our heads together, and figuring out what we can do quickly, so that we're not holding up the shooting crew, and we can move on. Oftentimes we'll say we'll work on this shot and we'll go away, problem solve, come back, and we'll have something for you in half an hour or however long we think it's going to take.
Now, I can imagine as well, like you don't really want to break the bad news, but if you're working with things so delicate and they're quite important pieces for the film, you kind of just need to have that extra time and just that care and attention, and because you don't want then to delay, but then also you don't want it to malfunction whilst you're rolling as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, Fede was great to work with. I would just be right beside him at the monitors, and he'd be whispering to me, get this one to do this, get that one to do that. And I'd be communicating to my team saying, go, 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 do this, annoyingly in their ears all day.
What sort of notes would you just see? Would you just say, make it scarier, make it faster, scare them a
Um,
bit more?
yeah, basically, like, because on a lot of the puppets, there would be one puppeteer on the legs, one puppeteer on the extended proboscis, one puppeteer on a rod holding the whole body together. So it would be, Callum, harder, harder, harder. And I'd be slapping the proboscis on someone's face, or legs, 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 legs. Yeah, it was just a lot of one word commands repeated over and over as Fede's punching me and saying, go, 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 scarier.
I can imagine your truck as well, having like a whiteboard with phrases of the day and taking bets about what's going to be said the most,
We
which would
did.
be.
Yeah, we had Tim Tozer back in the workshop who had an open radio with him, and we'd come back at the end of the day, and there'd be quotes on the board.
Oh, joys of working on set. You mentioned a little bit about this as well, about pranks with face huggers and Freddy having people go into people's easy ups and all of that. Did you guys have play any pranks on anybody?
Definitely people coming into, we had a great workshop space right on at the studio, close to all the stages. And of course, everyone would want to come in and see the face huggers. So there was a lot of, we if someone came into the workshop, we'd bring out the remote control huggers and scare them, or just drop silicon huggers from the ceiling or anything like that. Absolutely.
Absolute terrors, honestly.
These beautiful, horrible creatures, and if you can't play with them, what's the point of getting up in the morning?
Yeah, 100%. But still, I don't think if I was there, I don't think I'd get any work done because it'd just be like, who can we scare today? How can we set it up? What can we do it? Can we put it in certain places that people might? Would it be deemed appropriate if we hang it on this, like the producer's wall when they come in, or if they're on a Zoom call, have it crawl, scale the wall? Maybe, who knows?
Yeah, we didn't get into any of the producers' offices.
I think it's probably best wise, but
Yeah.
it would be worth it though. It would be one of those like urban legends that people would say on set for many years to come. Um, just to hit with my penultimate question, there's a lot. I'm curious to know what you guys' takes are on the whole practical versus digital debate that people have online about the film. The way, like, I think the way that I see it is that if you get the practical side correct, then the digital side will look seamless. And I think as well with so much tech changing and how I think we as audiences kind of notice a bit more if something's slightly off with the sort of digital side. But how do you guys see it, and do you think you could be able to settle the debate for us?
I agree with that. I think that we've in recent years we've seen a swing back to more practical and less relying on visual effects. And then having a marriage between those two worlds where we create and bring to set the practical, and then it's augmented or tweaked in visual effects or multiplied. When there's 100 face huggers running down a hallway, of course there's going to be some visual effects involved in that. And I think that that's where the practical and the visual is working together in a good relationship lately. And like I said earlier, I think it's always better for the cast and for everyone on set. I mean, even the camera crew, the lighting crew, to have physical things where you're actually interacting. It's another character in the story, and if that character is a tennis ball, it's harder to get excited and passionate about every shot. But when there's actually this nightmare fuel there with you, it's a lot easier for the whole crew and the cast to be excited and come up with more creative ideas.
One thing I want to say about the legacy of animatronics is what we're seeing now is that animatronics, all this beautiful stuff that happened for a few decades, right, that is now having a resurgence, is bleeding into other parts of our existence as well. It's not just film. Like half of our animatronics work that we do here at Wētā Workshop is not for film. It's actually for immersive experiences or for things that are physical based, right? I mean, even for these facehuggers, the RC facehuggers made an appearance at Comic-Con, right? Animatronic puppets that can actually kind of like be present in reality. So it's this really beautiful spin-off that we see all this really amazing work that's had decades of investment, right, is actually influencing, immersive experiences in physical reality, which for us is a really kind of cool opportunity.
Do you find as well, like now, because there has been that sort of debate and talk about it, that when people see the behind the scene videos and see how much work goes into it, that one, they appreciate it more, but then two, they see a whole different side of filmmaking that we as audiences wouldn't really take into consideration.
Absolutely. I've had on this part and on other projects, after it's come out and I'm talking to friends or people on set about the film, and often are shocked that it was practical. Because I think a lot of people just have the mindset that, oh, that's a creature, it's probably VFX. But then you look behind the scenes, or I show them pictures of our team on set, and people are blown away that, wow, that's actually real, and that's cool, and that's why it was so scary, because it was all practical and real and happening on the day.
I think as well, like the mechanical side, because I I wouldn't, it's probably bad to admit, but I wouldn't really have thought of the mechanical side as much, just because as audience members, you see the final film, you see how they move, and then sometimes behind the scenes, you see little bit like snippets of it. But then it's amazing how much mechanical side plays a part into it, and how much sort of physics and practicality of it as well, and the engineering involved. Yeah, that blows my mind as well, because it's just like, wow, you don't necessarily think of like films with engineering. You think of engineering more with stuff like a vacuum cleaner, um or I don't know, like a jet engine as well.
Or a bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say bridge, but I thought like, no, that's too easy.
Yeah,
Um,
certainly there's a massive appeal, right, in like just the like watching mechanical things play out, right, in how it works. And you're right, a lot of that's hidden, and to a certain extent, I mean, Tyler's right that some of the most successful items on the film are actually just a kind of like a piece of a silicon without any mechanism that's just thrown against a wall, right? But there's certainly a visual appeal in sort of the behind the scenes nature of like people seeing how those things work, because I think it just opens people's minds in terms of like how what the opportunities are for like how creatures can be made. And I think a lot of that is the fact that it's a real physical thing that can exist on a table in front of you, right? For me, it's everything I live for, right? So I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and for Cam and the team at Weta Workshop, it's engineering in it, but it's always different. Like,
Yeah.
you can make a remote control face hugger, and then the next project you're making a remote control something else, but it's completely different design, completely different engineering, completely different mechanics that are inside, which is a challenge, which I think we all love, kind of rising to those challenges.
Mm.
and I think as well, like creating that challenge is always going to spark the keep that hunger going, but then also spark a different creativity of how you're going to work and how you're going to create something, and how many silicon facehuggers you can throw at a wall before that sticks. Um, we just want to hit you up with my final question. You both have worked a number of sci-fi films, but I guess which sandpit would you like to play in most next?
I love making tiny, intricate mechanical things. So I would love to work on Gremlins. I would love nothing more than to work on 1,000, like an army of tiny mechanical creatures would absolutely be my like, that would get me out of bed every day for like 5 years. It'd be great. Yeah. So like fingers crossed.
For me, there isn't really a specific franchise or universe, but it's more the people that I get to work with, and working with people like Fede, who are real collaborators and who trust in the team and trust in our expertise and our knowledge, and work with us as filmmakers to create their film. And working with Weta Workshop and having this great team of designers, builders, and engineers behind me on set. That's what I'm excited about.
That's definitely Cam. I think you need to contact HR and make sure that Tyler gets a raise after that answer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll play them an audio snippet. Yeah.
And also, I like your answer, Cam, as well. Gremlins. Yeah, I think there needs to be something there. I think it's owned by Disney now. So if Bob Iger, if you're listening, we've got ideas.
Please. Yeah.
Um, Cam, Tyler, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was great talking to you.
Alien Romulus is going to be streaming on Hulu. It'll be released on Blu-ray with also a Ultra HD version. and then also a special VHS copy coming out December 3rd. And that's all out on December 3rd. Thank you guys once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And before I leave as well, one big shout out to Jade Lucas, who helped us facilitate this as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jade.
Awesome. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. You guys have a good day and take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.